So Republicans are finally ahead. They are leading in the polls just like I said they would. The red wave is slowly approaching. We are almost there. We are just a couple weeks out from the November midterms. Now, just before I start, I just want to quickly ask that you please consider subscribing, leaving a like on this video, commenting, let me know what you think. I want to see if I can try and reach 500 subscribers by the midterms. Might be a bit of a reach, but I'd like to see if it's possible. Anyways, starting off, I'm going to be doing a 2022 governor prediction just a few days out, couple weeks out from the election. So I'm going to do this like I normally do. It's been a while since I've done a couple videos, so I want to do this, and I'm going to do a Senate video next sometime this week. Now, starting off, I'm just going to do the usual filling out the safe states as we always would in these predictions. Don't really have to change anything up. It just works, you know? So there's going to be some interesting things to consider with this as a whole. The safe states in this case will look a little different than some might expect because Democrats are not doing too hot. They're not performing as well as they should be, and we can see that here just with the likeliness of voting. Republicans are just much more likely to vote. Younger people, Democrats currently have overall more support amongst younger people, but they're not very likely to vote, while Republicans, who have a much larger lead over older voters, they're much more likely to vote, and overall, Republicans are more enthused to vote, so that is going to play a massive role in the overall voting results. Even if some polling shows Democrats potentially ahead, they are not necessarily as likely to vote as the Republicans are. Republicans are also currently leading in a number of the most important key issues in a recent ABC Ipsos poll, which has Republicans, the GOP, leading in both inflation, gas, the economy, and crime, all by 13 to 15 point margins. That is huge. And that's something to consider as well in a D+4 sample to consider going into the actual prediction, the actual midterm results, what will likely happen. And as I said before, Republicans, as I was saying in the past, around this time when Republicans were down and everyone's like, oh, well, nope, this is what's going to happen. Red wave's gone. Ha, you lost. Democrats are going to win. Red wave's dead. Blue wave's coming. Here comes the row wave, you know, all of that crap. And I said, you can go back and watch my videos. I said very clearly, Republicans will gain the closer we get, just like in 2014, where they gained last minute, they started gaining, and they ended up with a 2.4 lead in the generic ballot. The difference is, we now have a 3-point lead. Again, 2014, the overall final result, the final spread was a 5.7 point overall generic vote margin. So that's about 3-something point overperforming the polls. If that happens again, Republicans reach 6 or 7%. And even so, we also have the same thing if we look at the actual overall margins on 538s. Now, their model's much worse. They can include way too many garbage polls, a adults poll, an adults poll, a registered voter poll, registered adult. Like, there's too many really horribly done polls, and even then, Republicans are still ahead. So, if we consider that, that is something very important looking at this. So, we're going to fill out the rest of this map. Kansas, likely. Not much to say. It's going to flip back. It was lucky that Democrats even got it in the first place. Rhode Island, I'd say likely. That's actually something that's quite interesting to consider. Next is Arizona. I have Arizona going likely, maybe lean to likely. If we look at Arizona right now, as you can see, Lake is ahead by about a point and a bit. She's actually leading by more. It's just 2 polls here that have really just kind of dragged her down just a small bit, and even then, she's really not behind in these polls. And again, underestimating Republicans is something polls are really good at. So overall, this lead here, these are consistent leads. Like every other poll is getting around 3 to 4 points. So again, assuming they're still just general underestimating, I'd say lean to likely is the result we will see for Arizona. And then another important one, very important, is the state of Nevada. Nevada has Joe Lombardo ahead in some recent polls by about 6 points, which is huge. I'd say at this point, very well, Nevada is easily the the easiest flip, most likely flip, and I'd say it's almost guaranteed that it flips at this point for both the Senate and the governorship, but especially the governorship right now. I could even see Lombardo winning Clark County, which is huge. It's not guaranteed, but it's huge. At the bare minimum, it'll be within 5 points, which is a very big thing to consider. So the state of Nevada, right now, I'm considering putting it in the likely column, but I think lean is a little bit more on the safe side. Either way, Republicans still pick it up by at least 4 points, I'd say, at this point, which is huge. Now, another one, these ones are all actually safe. Texas will be safe. Abbott will win. No way O'Rourke wins. DeSantis is pulling ahead by like almost 10 points average. He wins that easy. Brian Kemp, he is leading interesting polls, but he is leading. He's leading the state by like almost 10 points as well over Stacey Abrams, who's just such an unappealing candidate. Realistically, I just can't say there's anyone who's actually enthused to get out and vote for her. Again, an unappealing candidate. She's even said she does not like the state. She's openly attacked the state of Georgia. That's not a good move if you're trying to win the state's governor race. Really, it's just stupid. But then again, there are always these progressive Democrats who are just stupid. So it really works in her favor, I guess. She'll pick up the dumbest amongst, and then overall, the people who actually matter will not vote for her, and she's going to lose by 10 points. Thank God. And as a result, that will probably be what will drag Walker over the finish line, because vote splitting is not absurdly likely in the state of Georgia. So, in the end of the day, Kemp winning by such a wide margin pretty much guarantees Walker a victory. So, moving on, we also have the last state that I'd say is pretty much safe as well, and that's Ohio. Not much to say. Nan Whaley is polling horrendously. Really, it's actually quite sad how bad she is polling. I don't think I've seen polling that bad before, but she is polling behind by like almost 20 points in the state of Ohio, which obviously state had been swing state for a while. It's pretty much a safe Republican state at this point, but still, 20 points, almost 20 points behind Governor Mike DeWine. That is an impressive margin to be polling behind somebody. Like, really, you have to be just such, like, she's just such an unrecognizable candidate. She hasn't campaigned well. Nobody's seen any, or very few people anyway, have seen almost anything about her or know anything. So it's really no surprise. And overall, vote splitting won't be enough in the state of Ohio as well for Vance to not at least win by almost 8 points as well. So overall, Ohio will be safe as well. Now, filling out the rest of the states that won't be safe whatsoever, we have Wisconsin. I'm going to start with Wisconsin. Michaels, I think, will win that by a lean margin. Michaels is a fairly appealing candidate. He's a good candidate. I like him. He's got some really good policy issues. And Tim Walz is just not popular. He's not a good governor, so he's not going to do well against Tim Michaels, a actual good candidate. And then again, polling's also showing Michaels at the least is tied, potentially leading in a decent number of polls. And then Ron Johnson as well is currently leading his polls. Again, Wisconsin is a state that very, very much underestimates Republicans in polling. And I really don't understand why. I'm not well versed on that, but it has done that consistently for quite a while. So realistically, I do put Wisconsin at least in a lean margin. It's very possible it even could achieve a likely margin. It might be a bit of a stretch, but it is possible. Continuing, we also have the state of New Mexico. This one I've been a bit back and forth on, but at the end of the day, I think Ron Chetty wins it in a tilt margin. It'll be very, very close either way, whichever candidate wins. Now, hopefully Ron Chetty does win it, but it might be a bit of a stretch. I do think he wins it, though. Again, bit of a stretch, but I think he wins it. And then Colorado, not much to say. Polis probably wins it by a likely margin. At this point, I really can't say he's going to lose. I'd like to say it, but not enough polling has shown that he's behind. So at the end of the day, he probably wins by a likely margin, which as we'll find out soon, will be a larger margin than the state of New York. Let's do that one quickly. New York. Currently, Hochul is only leading by 6.8 points. The state of New York. Who would have ever thought that the state of New York is currently only at a likely margin and probably will be closer than the state of Colorado? If we look closer at these polls, there's even a poll that has Zeldin ahead by 1, which is quite impressive. And the only reason this is even over 6.8% is because of this one poll that has Hochul ahead by 11 points, only 11 as well. We have to consider the state voted like 20 or 30 points more Democrat than Republican in the 2020 cycle. So, considering just how much the margin has shrunk for Democrats, that just shows you how bad they really have been doing and truly how bad Hochul is. It also shows that Zeldin has been quite a good candidate so far, and I do think he could potentially pull it off. Now, I don't think it'll even be likely. I think lean is the margin I would give it at this moment for Hochul, but I'm not opposed to considering Zeldin winning if we can see more polling that continues to show gains like this for Republicans for Zeldin over Kathy Hochul. So that's just a very interesting one. Like, I really didn't think that would be a state I'd be putting in the lean margin. At least earlier on. Earlier on, I always had it safe, but recently it's just gotten closer and closer, and it's something Democrats should be very concerned about. Now, another state that you'd also expect would be like 20 to 30 points Democrat is actually currently polling in favor for Republicans in a lean margin, I'd say. Pretty close to a lean margin. We have the state of Oregon. Look at that, right there. Christine Drazen leading by about a point. Consistently getting multiple polls where she is leading over the Democrat Kotek, except for one poll here, one Civics poll. Again, Civics is just not a very good pollster, that has Kotek ahead by 8. Now, that's partially because of vote splitting on the left, but even then, despite the vote splitting, there have been some polls without the vote splitting considered, and again, Data for Progress is a Democrat pollster, and Drazen's ahead by 1. So that's a very interesting thing to consider. Oregon's usually considered one of the more left-wing states in the country. Obviously, they have some insane leftist garbage policy, and the state's just been collapsing recently. Like, it was the center for all of the Antifa garbage, but despite that, Republicans are actually polling quite well, and very well could actually win the state. Now, we also have the state of Michigan, that one being Tudor Dixon, Gretchen Whitmer. Dixon, the Trump-endorsed candidate, a great candidate. She has some very good policy, and Whitmer being the Democrat candidate, who is just a piece of garbage, and there's nothing redeeming about her. Literally nothing. Like, I actually cannot name one thing that is redeeming about her. She's not a good candidate, but she just has such a stranglehold on the state, and hopefully, based on at least some polling I've seen, she very well could win. Not Whitmer, sorry. Very well could see Dixon win. She's tightened the margins a fair bit as of late. She's only 5.7 points behind. Even some polls have had her ahead a little bit recently, not a lot, but it has very, very much so tightened from where it was earlier on, where it was consistently around like double digits. It's now down to 5.7. And again, we give that just a bit more time before the actual elections. I do think she can pull it off, and I think she'll pull it off in a tilt margin, which will be a huge win for Republicans and something that I'd say is pretty necessary. Otherwise, the state of Michigan could probably be lost. Another very important state is Pennsylvania. This one is arguably more important, much more important at least than Michigan, overall in the grand scheme of things. I think this one being Mastriano and Shapiro just letting crime run rampant in the state and just destroying the state. And then Mastriano, a very good candidate with amazing policy. He's a very respectable man. He's very integral, and he is just overall a good person. He is currently behind, yes, in polling, but at the end of the day, I do think he actually makes up the margins and wins. Dr. Oz also gaining in the polls will likely to some extent pull him over the line, at least a little bit. Vote splitting, it does happen. Like, split ballots will happen, but not at the margins that polling seems to show it happening. So at the end of the day, I think Pennsylvania does end up going for Mastriano, assuming he can at least get a bit more funding going in. It'll be close, but nobody really, like, again, this is the thing. You don't see a lot of people enthused to vote for these Democrat candidates. It's just the way the media puts the attention on it, and then it's the polling that just makes it seem like, oh, well, no, I guess Republicans are done. And then they write it off the state and they just go, oh, I guess we can't win. And then boom, that's what happens. Only because we let that happen. This is the thing. We can't be complacent if we want to win. If you want to win, you want to make sure this red wave happens, which, as we can see, is very much currently starting to happen. We need to get out and vote. Now, the last two states here, I'm just going to quickly do it. I'm not going to explain it much. It's not much to talk about. I think Minnesota probably tilt D right now, and Maine tilt D, lean D. I'm going to give it lean D, and Minnesota lean D. So that is the final governor map. This is what I think the overall results will probably look like at the end of the day. I'd say this is the most likely results, but best case scenario would be Minnesota, Colorado, New York, and Maine flipping, which are all currently possible in this environment. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing, leaving a like on the video as well, and let me know what you think about my prediction, what you think the overall generic ballot might be by the time we get to the midterms. Anyways, that's all for now. Hope you guys have a good night.